Hey there, Cinephiles. Matt Jarbo here with $3 Theater, and today we're going to be chit-chatting about Harry Potter and the new television series because we got a bit of an update about that coming out of Hollywood Reporter in an interview with Channing Dungey. She says here that the series will be more in-depth than the films, and obviously, I think that's an obvious thing, right? If they're going to be doing roughly 7 seasons of the show, that each season is going to probably be between 6 and 13 episodes. I believe each season is going to get longer as time goes on, or maybe they might all just be 8 episodes or whatever it's going to be. The first couple books are pretty short. If you don't recall, like the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone here in the States is roughly about 276 pages. And I think like Chamber of Secrets was kind of running in the neighborhood of around like 331 pages. I could be off on that one. I'm not too sure. But when I think about this series and I think about it going to HBO Max or Max, whatever you want to call it, and I think about the potential for it to be almost like an entire revival of the franchise, I'm a little torn, to be honest with you. So back in 2001, I was working at a drive-in movie theater in San Diego, and they had me out checking tickets after the summer season ended. And I had nothing to do out there. I had nothing to do. So my sister basically like shoved the Harry Potter books into my hands, and she was like, "Read these, you dumbass." So I did. I sat down and I read the first book because I knew the movie was coming out. I'd seen the trailer. It looked pretty cool, right? From Chris Columbus, director of Home Alone. And I'm like, hell yeah, that's my childhood, man. And so I sat down and I read the first book and I plowed through it in a couple days. And then I immediately went on to the second book. And I still think like the second book and the opening of Chamber of Secrets when Ron steals the car and they go and they bust Harry out of the Dursleys' house, whatever the hell, whatever, the aunt and the uncle. You know, there's like a great bit in that where basically it's like, it's hilarious because, you know, he's like, "Where'd you get this flying car?" And then Ron's, if I recall, it's been again over 20 years. Like, you know, he's like, "Do you know who my brothers are?" or something like that, right? It's like, "Bitch, get in the car, let's go." And I feel like the hilarity of that scene in the movie version of it kind of like underscored like what I felt could have been a really solid, funny kind of like bro moment between Harry and Ron. But what really got me was as the movies progressed, like the liberties that they took. And I make this comment a lot about Prisoner of Azkaban. Prisoner of Azkaban is a really, really, really good book. There's a lot of lore building, a lot of expansion of the world, all the new characters, you know, Sirius Black, the Prisoner of Azkaban, the Dementors, all that stuff. And the movie, the Alphonse Cuarón directed movie, is such a tonally like different shift from the 2 Christopher Columbus films that it just felt odd. And then there were so many things that they just like left out, you know, like the Marauders map. They left out a lot of info about the Marauders map. And then they just had that reveal at the end, you know, and I'm just like, okay, right. Like you could have done more with that, I guess. And, but it was shorter. It was a shorter movie than the other two, but it was still good. But you know, and it is the best made movie in that franchise, right? Because then they went on to go do Goblet of Fire, and Goblet of Fire was like my favorite book, you know, and it had an epic cliffhanger ending. Because at the end of Goblet of Fire, if you don't recall, basically like Harry wakes up and he's talking to Dumbledore, and Dumbledore's like, "Look, Snape has left. He has gone back to the Death Eaters, but he is going to be a double agent." Okay. And like the war is coming, the war is basically like, it's basically almost here. And there's a big cliffhanger at the end of that book. And like, I read all 4 of those books before I saw the first movie. So I was like up to date on my Harry Potter lore, and I was a big fan of it. And then I read all the other books, and I've seen all the other movies, and they're all great. Both are good in their own right. And then I kept thinking to myself as years went on, you know, it would be interesting to see an actual adaptation of the series in television format, right? Or streaming format, because there are characters that were cut out of the books, right? Obviously you've got Peeves, okay, from the books, and he was cut out in the movies, you know, and you know, Nearly Headless Nick kind of had a bit of a muted role past like Chamber of Secrets. I mean, he did in the book too, But they did shoot the Death Day sequence, so I think it'd be really cool to see that finally play out on a TV series. And then at the end of book 5, after Sirius dies, Harry is distraught. He's upset. Obviously, this is like kind of his last real kind of like connected family member, or someone who really would understand him because a good friend of the parents, and his godfather, right? Basically, I'm trying to say his godfather, right? And in the book, he talks to nearly headless Nick, like really like the last time that we get any kind of interaction with him as far as I remember it. But the conversation is, why isn't Sirius here? Why isn't Sirius a ghost? And Nick like talks about the process of becoming a ghost, the choice you have to make in that time for that to happen, and Sirius chose not to do it. And it was a really interesting scene. It was a moving scene. It was a great scene with Nick and Harry, and just trying to explain about loss, you know what I mean? And like everything else. It was a really good scene, completely omitted from the movie. And then when you get into Half-Blood Prince, like a lot of people criticize Half-Blood Prince, but in the book from page 606, when Snape kills Dumbledore, till the end of that book, it's like, it's a roller coaster. I mean, like when Hogwarts erupted into battle, and you got the Dumbledore's army versus the Death Eaters, the Great Hall, like turns into a freaking like, Western, shootout sequence and everything else. And then you get to the end of the book and you find out that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince. And that reveal was really, really, really important and really, really, really good in the book. And then in the movie, they downplayed it because they wanted to set up the last 2 movies. And I understand that. And then book, the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2 did a good job with the adaptation. Obviously, some things were changed around, but it was a great conclusion to the franchise, and it stuck the landing, which was hard to do. Some of these things are kind of hard to do because the popularity was so big, it was so beloved at that point in time, and it had been 10 years of Harry Potter movies, so seeing an end is something that a lot of people are just going to be like, about, right? So when I think about like the show and the things that it should do and that it could do, I'm a little concerned about one of the writers, because you had a writer a while back come out and basically be like, yeah, I don't read the books, or he never read all of the books. And it was a writer named Andy Greenwald. And this kind of blew up in some of the places, some of the chuddier places online where people were like, why are you having someone work on this series who either hasn't read all the source material or doesn't necessarily respect the lore and respect the canon and respect the source material? And that, of course, becomes a bigger problem because, yes, you are going to have books that are going to be adapted for television. Sure, they're going to have multiple episodes. We don't know the episode count yet, but it is going to be something that needs to be faithful and also, within the constraints of what would be a television show. And I think like it's, even though like the showrunner is saying that Francesca Gardner, she's saying, and J.K. Rowling is saying that this is going to be a faithful adaptation of the original books. I don't know how involved JK is at this particular point in time, largely because of her controversies online. But I mean, they are wanting to start filming the series in 2025 and release it in 2026 or early 2027, which is a long ways away, obviously. But if they can get it right, I think it's going to be big. That being said, again, when you have a writer like Andy Greenwald, who's kind of just like, he says here's a quote that he said about the, about the books, about skepticism in rigorous adaptation, saying, if something is trumpeting its absolute rock steady faithfulness, I think the pleasures that can be derived from that are probably not going to be for me. Meaning that are we going to get to see the scene with the troll in the bathroom when Ron, Harry, and Hermione kind of at that point become friends? Are we going to get the line, oh, did Peeves release the troll in the bathroom? Because that was a line in the book that was cut out of the original movie that people were kind of upset about back in the day, right? When you had your 2001 book firsters, by the way, you had that with Lord of the Rings as well. But anyway, there was things that they omitted that should be there, that these little lines of dialogues. And it's not that you need to be, I guess, 100% like religious in the adaptation, but you got to hit the high notes. And yeah, you're going to have to like summarize a couple things, and certain characters might be kind of combined as they always are. There's issues there, but I think with the length of the first couple books, the breadth of lore that you get, the world building that you get, the fun moments with the characters, it's going to boil down to like solid writing, solid dialogue, and you're going to need to have character, like the actors are going to have to be faithful. And what I mean by that is what you might infer from that, meaning if you have got like, you know, I don't want to say diversity for diversity's. I think there's a lot of diversity in Hogwarts, but there are very clear definitions of what the characters look like. And that is something that is probably going to have to be adhered to. The only one I feel that they won't is probably Hermione, because Emma Watson has kind of like set the stone for set the groundwork for that. Hermione was kind of a goofy looking girl. It wasn't until book 4, I think, when she like loses her teeth and she regrows them to fix her smile, right? Like that's going to be a thing. But you know, you're going to have to follow, because people are going to get real mad about that. And if they try to start doing, you know, like casting, I don't want to go into it because I hate to say it like that, because people might go, oh, you're just being whatever. It's not that I want the best actor to do the role, but you got to realize that when you get into these kind of very hardcore fandoms that can either make or break your product, if you start deviating too much from the source material that was made popular because it's the source material, that rabid fan base might turn on you. And they're not doing it all entirely because they're all run by just evil bigots or whatever, but it has a lot to do with the fact that like these are ambassadors of the fan base. These are the people that are going to introduce it to others. And these are the people that are going to then spread their love online and try to get other people hyped up. And so when you go down that pathway, and if you start going down that path and potentially angering people, you're only going to make it harder for the product to stand on its own. And that's just my take on it. I'm going to watch whatever they do, to be honest with you, because I love Harry Potter. But I think that we've seen many instances in recent years of too many changes to the source material can have a tendency to drag down an adaptation. And people love something because of it. I know everyone's got a different interpretation, but the core elements are always the core elements, and those should remain. You know, and I don't know. Those are my thoughts on it. What are yours? Let me know down in the comment section. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe. Please like the video. If you want to see more topics discussed by me, let me know. What is it you want me to talk about? And we'll do that. Thank you guys very much. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.